I would just like to delve into bonding a little bit, and I'd like to do it, maybe there's two types of bonding. One is ionic, this is quite complex really, and the other type of bonding is covalent bonding. I just want to have a little bit of an explanation about these two types of bonds. So bonding is the way different atoms join together, and then they exist together, and they either float around or they exist in your body together as molecules. So the first type of bonding I would actually like to look at here is something called ionic bonding. So in fact here I've got some sodium. I've got a sodium atom here, and I've got a fluorine atom here. Now atoms really love it when their most outer shell is full and stable. So sodium here, it's only got one electron in its outer shell. It doesn't really want one electron in its outer shell. It would love to have a full outer shell. It would love to get rid of this electron and just have its second shell with 8 electrons in it, because that's a more stable state. I like to say the atoms are happier like that. And fluorine over here, it's actually only missing a single electron. So it's got 7 in its outer shell. And again, it would love to have 8 electrons in its outer shell, because that makes it, it makes it more stable. I like to say it makes it happier. So what happens in ionic bonding is, I'll play this little clip for us here. So this 1 electron in sodium, it leaves sodium and it goes over to fluorine. What happens then is sodium becomes, I'll pull it back a little bit, sodium then becomes positively charged. So sodium has lost 1 negatively charged electron. So overall, it becomes positively charged. Fluorine has gained 1 negatively charged electron. So overall, it becomes negatively charged. And then what happens is, the positively charged atom, it's actually called an ion. Atoms with a charge are called ions. It's a positively charged atom is called a cation. And a positively charged ion or cation is attracted to a negatively charged atom or ion, and a negatively charged atom is called an anion. So positively charged ions or cations are attracted to negatively charged ions or anions, and that's an ionic bond. Basically, the positive charge being attracted to the negative charge. So I'll give you another example down here. I've got sodium. So sodium's actually only got 1 electron in its outer shell. And in this diagram here, all that's being shown is the electrons in the outer shell. Chlorine's got 7 electrons in its most outer shell. Again, we're only seeing the outer shell electrons or the valence electrons. Sodium likes to lose 1 of its electrons or give it to chlorine. It goes over there to chlorine. And then sodium becomes positively charged. Chlorine becomes negatively charged. Those two atoms are attracted to each other to form a salt called sodium chloride, and that's actually table salt. So table salt, the little crystals, is an example of atoms which are bonded together or joined together via an ionic bond. Last quick example here, I've got magnesium, which has 2 electrons in its outer shell. Oxygen has 6, so to have a full outer shell to be happy, oxygen would like 2 more, magnesium would like to give 2. Magnesium does lose 2 electrons, 2 negative charges, to end up positively charged, or 2 positive charges. Oxygen gains 2 negatively charges, 2 electrons to become a 2 minus charge. And then magnesium and oxygen, they join together because they're attracted to each other to form magnesium oxide. So that's another example of an ionic bond. So that's one way that different atoms can join together to form different molecules. Now I'll also go through really quickly covalent bonding. So covalent bonding is basically when atoms share electrons. So a couple of quick examples. Here I've got hydrogen only has 1 electron in its outer shell. So the first shell, it would love to have 2 electrons. So what they do is they just share. So one hydrogen says, I'll share mine if you share yours. And they both share. And then, because they're both sharing, in effect they both have 2 electrons really available, and this makes them more stable. Sometimes they can be drawn like that, the shared electrons, or sometimes chemists just draw them as a single line. So that's covalent bonding, is when electrons are shared. Here's another example, and this is chlorine. So chlorine needs 1 extra electron. and there's 2 chlorine atoms. They say, how about we share? How about we share? If I share one of mine, will you share one of yours? And they do that. So they share these 2 electrons in the middle each. And then, if you kind of have a look at that, because they're sharing 2 electrons each, in effect, each chlorine atom does have a full outer shell. So it's like it's still got 8 electrons, around it. And that makes the atoms more stable and, really happier atoms. Last example again, so this is hydrogen, it's missing one. Chlorine's missing one. If they share them here, hydrogen has access to 2, so it's happy about that. And chlorine has access to 8, so it's happy about that. And then they're far more stable. Those atoms are far more stable. So that's a really, really quick rundown. And some pretty hard stuff, but that was a little bit of stuff about ionic bonding. So that is when different atoms give or take electrons and then are joined together by the forces of the positively charged ion attracted to the negatively charged ion. And covalent bonding is when atoms share their outer shell electrons and that really holds them together. So there are 2 different ways that atoms can join together to form molecules.